The agenda this week: handicap the state of Ontario's horse racing sector, assess the new animal welfare regime in the province, and examine geopolitical tensions with Iran. The agenda's weekend review begins with what you need to know about city budget making. Jennifer, I want you to start us off here and really go back to first principles and help explain what kinds of things are really involved in creating the operating budget for the cities and towns all over this province. Go.
So a city's operating budget is sort of the vital piece of all of this. It really is about our day-to-day lives in cities, how we get around, how we live, how our children are taken care of. And the operating budget is the part that gets debated the most, I would say, at council. You're really getting into how many police officers are on the street, how often your garbage is picked up, how often your library is open. These are all really critical things for us on a day-to-day basis. And on top of that, there is a capital budget. This is a separate thing.
Hold off on that. We're going to come to that.
Okay.
Everybody can't help but notice that the federal government runs deficits every year in the billions of dollars, and so does the provincial government. The city's budgets are always balanced. Why is that?
So there's actually provincial laws about this. The Municipal Act says that our budgets have to be balanced in our fiscal year. So that annual operating budget, there has to be an equal amount of money coming in that's going out. There's some fancy budget magic, which we can talk about, that you can kind of get around that. But for the most part, our operating budget has to be this balanced, full pie at the end of the day.
So if, for example, the city of Ottawa finds itself, let's say, $10 million short, and they don't want to close pools to make up that $10 million, they can't go to a bank and say, can you loan us $10 million just to get us over the hump? That's illegal?
Not for the operating budget. You have to figure out how to either cut the service or raise the money you need. That could be taxes. Maybe you raise the fees that people pay to access that pool to cover that gap. But those are all these choices that councillors and mayors have to make every year when they do the operating budget. Okay,
you've anticipated my next question which is all the money that cities and towns spend to provide services to their citizens, where does all that money come from?
Well, a very large portion for most cities come from a property tax base. That's your property tax bill on residents, so homeowners, business owners, and that all goes into a city coffer to fund these services that we all use. And there are other aspects of the budget, such as money that we might get from the federal or provincial governments, for example. In Toronto, for example, we have a rate-supported budget, so the money we pay for our water or for our garbage collection, and those are each slices of the pie that go to make up how many goods and services we're able to pay for each year.
And you said a moment ago, that's the operating budget, not to be confused with the capital budget. That's a different budget. What's that about?
So think of the capital budget as, if you're thinking about your own home finances. On a day-to-day basis, you hope you kind of have the cash to pay for groceries and your basic necessities. But you might be looking at investing in a house, or you need to fix the roof on your house. And so these are sometimes long-term projects, and the city has those too. They're just on a much larger scale. We're talking, tens of billions of dollars. So when you need to do road repairs, or you need to build a new community center, or you need to build a new transit line, these are all part of the capital budget. And in Toronto, every year we approve a 10-year capital budget where you can finance projects over a longer term, and they plan those out as much as they can in advance so that you're paying for those at an affordable rate.
Let me go to Ben with the next question. The money that pays for the things in the capital budget, does that come from a different place than the money that goes to paying for things in the operating budget?
It depends on the city. A good chunk of it comes from federal and provincial contributions, but a lot of it also comes from home buyers. Home buyers is they pay through development charges that are then paid for through development charges that go to the city. It's notionally on developers, but that ends up getting embedded into the cost of new homes.
Now, we just said a second ago, cities can't run deficits to pay for things in the operating budget. Can cities go into debt, for example, if they want to build a new subway line?
Yes.
Or build LRTs, or put up a sports stadium, or something like that?
Yep, absolutely. But there are debt limits prescribed by the province, and the City of Toronto also has its own bespoke debt limit, but they can go to debt as needed for long-term capital projects.
Okay, let's take the example of the LRT in Ottawa, for example. When they wanted to build that, where'd they go get the money for all that?
It's a combination of going to going through debt for financing. That's how they get the cash right now. But they'll know that there's in the long term property taxes that will pay for some of those costs. But a lot of it will come from transfers from higher levels of government and through other mechanisms. Through development charges actually can't cover transit, but other things like water, roads, that sort of thing come from development charges.
Okay. With all of this background in place, now we ask you the toughest question. You ready?
Thank you.
Okay. Enid, municipalities are constantly being asked by their citizens to provide more services. At the same time, of course, citizens don't necessarily want to pay more in taxation in order to realize those services. So we have a bit of a conundrum here. What options do cities and towns all over the province of Ontario have to realize more revenue other than raising property taxes on homeowners and renters?
Well, there aren't a lot of options, Steve. And when Jennifer was describing the sources of revenue for municipalities, property taxes, user fees, transfers from other levels of government, Ben added development charges when we were talking about capital. Property taxes, user fees, and transfers. If you'd asked me this question 100 or 150 years ago, I would have answered the same way. Property taxes, user fees, that hasn't changed. If you look at the expenditure side of the budget, municipalities are doing way more things than they did 100 years ago.
Let's acknowledge, Scott, off the top, that all professional sports are subsidized in some way by the taxpayer, whether it's we're going to help you build your arena or your football stadium, or there's a
If you're
considerable.
holding the Grey Cup, there's access to
Absolutely,
public money
all
for
that.
those kind of things.
So how troubled are you by the fact that this industry gets a considerable subsidy from the taxpayer?
Well, I think the problem with it is that they came in saying, if you take this slot money away, you'll devastate the industry, which was true, obviously, as we've discussed. It had sort of got inflated by all this slot money that was pouring in. And then in the years since, they haven't really been able to figure out a way to transition to an industry that is sustainable on its own merits. And that's the concern, is that initially the government said, okay, we realize we're taking all this money away with no warning. Sorry about that. Here's some transitional money as we look to figure out ways to make the business sustainable. 5 years go by. Now they've basically said, we're not really trying to figure out a way to make it sustainable other than we're going to keep this funding arrangement so that it can exist. And that change of what is it we need to do to make people want to bet on horse races, come to horse races, have it as an entertainment option they want to do. I'm not sure I have the answer to how to do that. I just don't. It doesn't seem like in the years since that McGuinty sort of took his big swipe at horse racing, it doesn't feel to me like those things have changed.
What's the biggest problem horse racing has today, John?
Well, I think the reason why we are where we are now is because the government of the day, McGuinty government, forgot one thing, and that is horses don't have employment insurance. So there was that level of unemployment for horses was not going to be a healthy thing. There's a lot of challenges going forward that every industry faces. What Nick talked about, where there's $3 chasing a dollar in terms of investment in this industry, has kind of always been the case in some way, shape, or form, which is why it creates so much economic churn for a dollar invested, which is why government after government around North America and around the world has decided to help keep the horse racing going because of the economic churn that it creates. Now, that's a level of investment that the government's measured. Now, 3 different governments have measured in Ontario and said about $100 million a year is about the happy number where the industry can go forward and we get that economic churn. The challenge for the industry is to work as an industry, to think as an industry, and to do the right investments so it creates its own future.
Okay, but there aren't too many people in the province of Ontario, I think, I could be wrong on this, but I think there are not that many people who object to the massive public subsidies that have gone into, for example, keeping the auto manufacturers afloat, particularly back in 2008 when it looked like 2 of them were going to go under. Do you sense a great deal of upset in the province over the subsidies going to horse racing?
I don't think so. I don't think this is a huge political issue, to be honest with you. I think it's been a problem for governments to understand this industry because while it may not be complicated, it's darn sure complex. And so it's been very hard for governments to understand the difference that the industry makes, particularly in rural Ontario, and what the metrics are that make the industry work.
Steve,
Please,
if
Jessica,
I
go.
may, I just wanted to make a point on the 100 million and the sustainability piece. As it relates to Woodbine and Woodbine Mohawk Park, a large amount of that is part of a commercial lease agreement with the government for the gaming partners at our sites. So there is a large portion of that 100 million that comes through a commercial lease agreement, which is a very large factor in the sustainability of racing at Woodbine and Mohawk and our move forward plan. So we certainly do have a plan moving forward to be self-sustainable.
Okay, let me read this, though, from the Toronto Star. This is how they reported this last year. Ontario's Finance Minister Victor Fedeli announced last week a new multi-million-dollar funding program set not to boost education or healthcare, not improve rural internet services, and certainly not animal protection post-OSPCA opt-out, but rather horse racing. Ontario will provide $10 million per year to horse racing, an industry about as necessary as the circus, as ethical as marine land, and as worthy of such funding as any other form of mere exploitative entertainment. Of all sectors in need of funding, the Ontario government's multi-million-dollar support of an industry as outdated and elitist as horse racing is simply unnecessary, unsustainable, and even unethical. Jessica Scott Reid, Toronto Star. There's no question she's not on the fence about this. What's your reaction?
No. So my reaction is that what's the facts that aren't included there are the number of jobs in rural communities that horse racing supports across the province. So over 20,000 jobs are specifically in the agricultural sector, and then it's over 40,000 jobs in the province related to racing. So that's the huge piece that's missing. And the agricultural piece of horse racing that's included in the fabric of Ontario that's been here since the beginning of Canada. So I think that it's important to note that. And then on the ethical side, I can assure you that the horses that race at Woodbine and Mohawk are treated exceptionally well, and the people that work in horse racing are there because they love horses. And that is a huge part of their lives, and they treat these animals like part of their family.
What are some of the sort of most common acts of cruelty inspectors find when they find animals that have been abused?
Animal cruelty exists on a spectrum. A lot of the cases there's something wrong, but they can be fixed quite easily. We don't need to move into the more ambitious penalties, et cetera, negotiation. It's a really multi-talented skill set that's needed to do this work because it's part law enforcement, part social worker, part nurse. They are seeing things that most of us couldn't stomach, and they're seeing them
Such as?
continuously. It's quite common to see neglect. So that's where you move into emaciation. You do see hoarding is quite common, and it's very challenging because it's a mental health disorder, and the people don't necessarily know that they're causing harm to 10, 20, hundreds of animals who may be in their care. These officers are seeing very difficult situations, and sometimes it's not only animals who are being burned or starved, their mouths taped shut, thrown off of balconies, all of these sorts of really abhorrent things. They're also seeing the abuse of women and children happening simultaneously.
Who does this?
Different kinds of people, and of course some people are not harming animals on purpose, and that's why the inspectors have this important skill set of being able to determine, is this a situation where we need resources or we need education? Of course you do move along the line. There's certainly sociopathic behavior and psychopathic behavior for the very serious criminal offenses. There's also things like dogfighting, which is one of the most appalling kinds of animal abuse because of the loyalty that's cultivated and then the harm that's caused to the dogs or the roosters. It's quite common in Ontario.
It's common.
People don't know that, yes. And it's often linked to additional crimes, firearms, narcotics, sometimes human trafficking. It's very challenging, and the officers may be identifying that, and in those cases they're going to be involving the OPP or other police services because that's necessary and very serious.
Have you ever heard of a situation where someone's gone to jail for mistreating animals?
It's very uncommon. It's most likely to happen in those instances where people are being abused simultaneously. So there might be a few charges related to people and to animals. But again, most of those cases, there's something wrong, but we can solve them. That said, now that we have this robust public investment, I think we're going to be discovering more and more things that we didn't know were going on, and undiscovered crimes, including helping children and women who are being abused that we might not have found otherwise, because it's difficult for humans to report or self-report, and sometimes hard to see if children are hiding their abuse. And if we use the animal investigations, if officers are looking for everybody, which they are, that opens the door for new possibilities for protecting vulnerable people as well.
Is that to suggest that when you harm animals, that's in some respects a gateway crime?
It can be, yes. There's a significant body of research on what we call the link between human and animal violence. So in some instances, it's a precursor that you harm animals before moving on to people. Sometimes it's more generalized, which is that a lot of sentient beings around you are being harmed by you.
If you had to put a ratio on it, those who purposely go out of their way to be cruel to animals versus those who are, if I can put it this way, simply neglectful and maybe don't even realize that they're harming animals because of their own peculiarities. Have you got a ratio of where it's at in the province today?
The latter is more common. That said, because we've had a charity doing this work, and that has been the case in most Canadian provinces and in countries like England, New Zealand, Australia, et cetera, we have a shortage of data. So that's something else that, as a researcher, I'm really looking forward to, but I think all of us will be better served by evidence-based policymaking, that in a year, in 5 years, we'll have far better records and more consolidated records from across the provinces, that someone can't be committing one crime in Thunder Bay and then doing it again in Peterborough, that we're going to have more concerted, effective record keeping and data, so we'll have an even better sense.
In terms of the world of public opinion, let's not forget here, this was tied to the assassination of Soleimani in many ways. So all of this, frankly, is about a chicken and egg argument that I think at the end of the day, we're not going to get to a conclusion just because of the reality that there's so many finger pointing going on.
Well, here's another reality, Christian. We don't have diplomatic relations with Iran right now. So what can we do, or what leverage do we have in order to get A, compensation for the victims of this plane shooting, and B, ensuring a proper investigation?
Well, the military always says intelligence always pays off. And I think in this case, we saw it early on. The Prime Minister came out unequivocally that both our own intelligence and our allied intelligence clearly corroborated that this was that plane was shot down. So he gave Iran an opportunity to change their tune. And Iran did change their tune, because the option is what Russia endured after the MH17 shoot down, so the Malaysian airliner over Ukraine. So I think the Iranian regime sort of picked sort of the better of all the bad choices that it had, faced with this dilemma about which route to pursue. And I think so Canada has a number of options at its disposal. The MH17 investigation has showed that with good intelligence and some really good physicists, you can actually reconstruct very precisely what happened. This particular anti-aircraft battery, the SA-15, is only operated by the Republican Guard. There's only 29 of them, so we can reconstruct with intelligence who the people are within that chain of command, and we can then pursue justice. We can attempt to pursue justice under our own domestic legislation, but we can also follow the MH17 precedent and try to pursue justice at the International Court. This case has not yet been heard, but I think it will set an interesting precedent for how we deal with airplanes that get shot down over airspace due to unintentional or military intent or whatnot. And so I think, this is unfortunately not going to be the last situation.
Let me get
like
this
this.
side on this. Go ahead.
The Iranian regime knows that there will be lots of lawsuits, And then particularly, not only for shooting these, but also the point that you mentioned. I'm not expert in aviation, but it seems that there is a Chicago Convention that if that there are some military involvement in the area, it's the responsibility of the government to notify everybody. So they haven't done that. So they are in deep trouble for that. But what Canada can do, of course, Iranians will try as much as they can not to provide any evidence for the lawsuits and the things. But I think Canada's options are very, very limited. But at the same time, Iranian regime would like to regain its diplomatic relationship with Canada.
Well, let me ask you about that. And I want to ask you this question because you're originally from Iran, but you've lived in Canada for a very long time. Were you in favor of Stephen Harper's government breaking off diplomatic ties with Iran when it did?
Well, you know, I don't agree with anything Harper about he did, but at the same time, on this, there were reasons, you know, because of Zara Kazemi and others who were killed and was not doing it. I cannot really, because there are plus and minuses on this.
I understand.
But for now, I can comment on this, that I understand that the Iranian regime wants to maintain, because not only there are lots of Iranians here, but there are many of their own close relatives and people are here. Don't forget that many of those people who have stolen money have come to Canada. Canada, tragically, has become a sort of joke in social media and also in Iranian cinema, that anybody who disappears, they say that he has gone to Canada, you know.
But the question becomes, is it now more difficult, you know, as we try to get compensation for our victims, we don't have diplomatic Go ahead. Not more difficult without relations?
Well, no, what they are doing, though, is suggesting that because they don't recognize dual nationality, they are going to pay them as though they were Iranian. And that's to set on their own terms. That's the biggest challenge, is that of 176, many of them actually were born in Iran, and so they're not recognizing dual citizenship. They're not going to pay them for what Canada is requiring vis-a-vis international law.
I think that's
they're going to settle it in domestic courts. So that's part of the bigger challenge. Just not having a diplomatic relationship that's going to make a difference. We can be just as effective through these back channels. I don't think there's any need to, frankly, and I know it's not a reward, but it will be seen as a reward at this particular time if we're to reopen the embassy. I was totally against Harper closing it, but this is not the time to signal to the Iran that we're okay with what they did.
If we had diplomatic relations, Steve, the Iranian government would say 3 Canadians were on that flight. Because all but, of the 57, all but 54 were dual nationals, and the Iranian government does not recognize dual nationals, right? So we would still be a minority shareholder in the investigation of the airliner because other countries had more. So I think that we can have a debate about diplomatic relations, but that's not germane to what the government needs to get done.
Okay.
Let's add one more issue. You know, Iranian compensation to families is an order of magnitude different from what Canadian compensation will be. That's all going to be fought out in the courts over the next several years. It's going to take years.
And that is just some of what we covered this week on the agenda. For more, including the full conversations, you can visit our website. That's tvo.org, our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, or our Twitter feed. That's twitter.com/theagenda.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.